dad used to always say, you can't teach an old dog new tricks, and I think that's total bullshit. Reinvention is the mother of invention. So I'm always trying to kind of reinvent myself in some way. Until 8 years ago, I had never played the guitar and I'd never sung outside of a shower, and now I do it in front of hundreds and hundreds of people all across the country. It's this fear, this deep insecurity, and I'm as insecure as anyone. But it's getting over that fear, moving beyond that fear of reinventing yourself and finding a new pathway. Sometimes we do it because we have to. We have no other choice. Sometimes we do it because we're bored. Sometimes we do it because we're curious.
I'm Garrick Francis. This is Inheritance to Income podcast, where we help families, founders, and leaders prepare people and systems, not just assets, for what comes next. I'm your legacy advocate. Let's talk about it. Today, it's my pleasure to welcome to the show an old friend, Aaron Perlut. Aaron has had a career that has spanned geography, it's spanned decades, and he's created branding and messaging for major companies, major energy companies, for clients, for himself. He's had a lot of fun, I think, throughout his career. And so we'll talk a little bit about his agency and what he's done there and kind of what comes next. And so, Aaron, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Garrick. It's great to see you.
Good to see you, too. So let's jump into it. I like to ask right out of the gate, when did you first realize that you had achieved success?
I'm still waiting for that moment. I honestly, I measure my success by the health and well-being of my kids. I don't really kind of think of it in professional terms at all. And my kids seem to be doing pretty well. And so I feel like because of that, I feel relatively successful. But, the road to success is always under construction. And it's always going to be a work in progress for me until I'm 6 feet under or, doing one of those Darth Vader funerals where I'm just lit on fire.
Just floating down the river.
Yeah, exactly.
That's it. That's right.
The Viking funeral.
So when you say you're still chasing, you're still achieving its family, as people are thinking about success, I mean, you've built a successful agency, 17 years. You've had a successful career as a brand and messaging, as a public relations professional. You've done a number of different things. So when you say you're still chasing it, how do you think people today define success? What are we chasing? Hey, I hope you're enjoying this episode of Inheritance to Income, where we help families, founders, and leaders prepare for what's next. Hit that like and subscribe button and share this with a family member or colleague who you think it would help. That'll help this message travel because inheritance has to come with instructions. Now let's get back in.
That's a great question. I think a lot of people look at economic means. They look at the things they have, and I don't know if those are my yard markers. I'm proud of the career that I built thus far. I mean, I'm 55 years old. I think I still probably have at least 12 to 15 years on my feet.
Maybe more.
Maybe more, yeah, depending on how long we're at war with Iraq. But it's a great question. I'm proud of what I've done, but I don't necessarily feel like it's been a success. And I just know I have more work to do, and I think there's more things I can give. And I think I'm also easily bored too. It's why I always tend to do 13 different things at the same time. So I'm always looking to explore and to grow and to learn, and I think we can all continue to do that.
Right. And I know as a business founder, you co-founder, you have built a successful enterprise, and it hadn't always been easy. But when you're working with your clients, right, when they're talking about their successes, your successes, how do you view that business owner definition of success? Is it your success, their success, a combination?
I think it's a combination. One thing that I'm very proud of is the fact that, organizations are revolving doors, and especially with today's young workers, they kind of come in and out. But we've helped a lot of people put food on their table. We've helped a lot of people build careers. We've had people at a small consultancy, a small agency. We've had people, many people for more than 10 years stay with us. And I think we've built a place that people want to come and work and feel like they're valued. To me, that's a success right there, because building a quality culture was incredibly important for me. I had come out of what I perceived to be a pretty bad organizational culture beforehand, and so I really wanted to, I knew what I wanted to build, and my partners and I were all aligned on that for the most part. And I also know that people don't hire us, and we can't put food on people's tables without doing quality work. And so when our clients feel like their KPIs have been met, and everyone honestly is different. It's usually around revenue, but there's always some nuances to it. But when they feel, when someone hires us and the metrics are, we improved this by 55%, this by 45%, and blah, 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 and they're happy. They feel like, wow, the investment they've made has helped them achieve what they needed to achieve. Yeah, you certainly feel good about that, but clients come and go, and the grass is always greener on the other side for clients. And especially when you're a small agency, they always believe that one thing we've often found is that they always believe that a big agency from one of the coasts is going to help them succeed more. They're oftentimes wrong. And so, I view it as fleeting, and my attitude is always, whether they're working within elasticity or they're a client of elasticity, is, do they enjoy the ride while they were on it? And while we're on it together, and that's my goal, that whether it's someone who's working on our team, a team member, or a client, do they enjoy the ride while they were along for it?
For a lot of founders, and you had, how many, you founded it with how many people?
There's three of us who basic founders, yeah.
Right. A lot of times when small businesses are created and founded, they have what I call founder gravity. I mean, everything needs to go through the founder in the beginning. They have the relationships, they have the networks, they have sometimes the capital, sometimes they don't, but they have the vision. But over time, if they retain everything, then it makes it very difficult on people to escape their orbit, either internally or externally. Yeah. How have you all navigated that whole issue of founder dependency, of everything relying on you all and having to let go of some things for success?
To quote our former boss, you're not wrong. I would say that, they do want to feel like they're getting the attention that the monthly payment they're making to us deserves. And so what we always have done in terms of staffing is had a partner assigned to every client. And so that there is a partner involved with the strategic end of things, maybe not necessarily on the executional end, but that's the nice thing about being a small firm. And I've seen it done the other way, where you kind of roll in the gray hairs and you pitch with this serious tenor in your voice, and then next thing you know, the work starts and they're gone.
Yeah, we've been on both ends of that ourselves.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And so we've tried really hard not to do that, and make sure that one of our partners is always involved. And we've been able to make it work. We've always had between, I'd say, 30 and 40 clients, and we've always been able to divide it up and make it work, and make sure we have senior people on each staff. And the other aspect is that having people that stick around a long time helps with that too, because you're able to build true bench strength and not just the aesthetics of bench strength.
Right. One of the things that I think when you talk about you mentioned building culture. One of the things that when we work together, and I've seen as you've grown your agency, is humor has always been a part of having fun has always been a part of your mantra. And so how has that infused the culture within everything you've done?
Yeah, that's a great point. So I feel like the company where you and I work together, I always believed we had a pretty good culture but we had a good culture for different reasons. We had a good culture because they cared about building leaders, They cared about letting leaders get exposed to new opportunities to grow and to broaden their portfolio and make them a better asset for the company. And I felt like we were, for the most part, treated pretty respectfully. And so, but you're right. But there was no humor involved in that company. I mean, it was a pretty serious company.
Yeah. We cracked a few jokes and got a few eyebrows raised.
Yeah. But, you know, our agency is a creative place. And I think that levity helps that creativity. It's not always a part of it. And in fact, I remember a couple years ago, we got hired by GoDaddy. And we worked with them for quite a long time. And when we got hired by them, people were like, "Oh, you guys are perfect. They do all that TNA advertising." I said, "No, that's actually what we're cleaning up." You know, because strategically we were trying to move them beyond that into more of a services company and focus on the product, not the dressing around that product. And so I think that culturally, yeah, you try to keep it light, you try to keep it fun, but you know, there's as I told my kids growing up, my wife did too. There's a time and place for everything, and yeah, and so I think it's just finding that appropriate balance, and we always tried to find that appropriate balance between a truly enjoyable culture where people are having fun and doing really good work that mattered.
I hope you're enjoying this episode of Inheritance to Income. Before we get back to the conversation, let me ask you this. What still depends too much on you? If decisions, approvals, relationships, family expectations still come back to you, it may be time to slow down and gain clarity. Francis Legacy Bridge Partners helps founders, families, and second chapter leaders prepare people and systems, not just assets, for what comes next. Start with a founder gravity check at francislbp.com. The link is in the show notes below. We'd love to have a conversation. Inheritance may begin by default, but legacy requires design. Now let's get back to the conversation. You mentioned your wife, your kids, your family, I know very important to you. And as a small business owner, a lot of times what I see, and I grew up in a small business in Irving Swain Press, the family system and the business system often were the system. There was not a lot of daylight between them sometimes. And so when you're talking or thinking about that small business culture, how intertwined with it was your family, your co-founders? How did those systems work together? And sometimes were they butting heads?
That's a great question. So one of the reasons I think we all wanted to start the firm was so that we would have more flexibility. Because, you know, this was 2000, we were ideating what we wanted to do in 2007, 2008. We launched the firm on January 1st, 2009. This was pre-COVID. This is before workplace flexibility really came to the forefront.
But it was right. It was right as the kind of the recession, if you will call it, or the housing and all the kind of terrors of 2008 were just kind of had rolled through.
Yeah, a lot of people thought we were crazy for starting the firm when we did, which we might have been. But we wanted to have. Being our own bosses allowed us to kind of dictate how and where we would get our work done. And we always believed that, look, as long as you're getting your work done, it doesn't matter if you're in a coffee shop, if you're in an office, if you're at home. And so, we were consistent with that mantra with our entire team. But it allowed me personally tremendous flexibility in kind of managing my lifestyle. I had 2 young kids. My partners both had 2 young kids and had 2 more, have had 2 more since. So, no, I mean, the balancing act was that I had the flexibility to get what I get to take care of my family, manage my personal life, but I also had the flexibility to kind of make sure I got things done when I needed to get it done.
Yeah. And how has that evolved over time with the family? As the family has grown and you've achieved different levels, I know, we achieve different levels of success. We acquire some things that we might have had on our checklist. How has that evolved?
Yeah, so when kids turn 16 and they can drive themselves around, it makes a big difference. And so that certainly was very helpful. And then, of course, my kids both went off to college. One of them has graduated now, and one of them still has another year left. And so I'm technically an empty nester, which I've really enjoyed. I miss my kids, but I've really enjoyed it, and I love seeing them go on and do bigger and better things. But I don't think it's really changed much at all, quite frankly. I mean, it's really just still kind of living that lifestyle where I'm able to make sure I get my work done, but also, doing things that I want to do at the same time and enjoying my life. And, whether it's, playing music or writing a book or hosting a music podcast or just spending time with my dogs, which I do a lot of. No, it's having that same consistency has kind of given me a lot of flexibility in life and allowed us to manage the business pretty well at the same time.
Yeah. As a founder, as a marketer, all these things, creatives, you've had music in your life for a long time. And I guess the question for some that I like to ask some people too is, when you find that hobby or that avocation or that other part of your life, what role does it play in helping you to either succeed or to get away or to separate? What role does that music that has been such a significant part of your life play?
It's a great question. I think one, I started the Loadout Music podcast 7 seasons ago, and it allowed me to kind of intimately understand the value and methodology of podcasting as a marketing means. And then playing music really has just been another creative outlet for me. Ironically, I've been able to use it on a couple of client engagements that have asked for needed, music infused in things we were doing for them. So I've been able to kind of leverage that. But it's really just given me more than anything a creative outlet, and I guess it's really given me new avenues to meet different people. As a principal of the agency, you're always looking for new opportunities to find clients, and so now music and entertainment is more ingrained in what I do, and so I'm able to better understand it and better speak to it and find pathways for our agency to fit into it.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, and I know music is one of those things where I've dealt with people, and I'm not the real musical type, as I like to tell people. I've sung occasionally in the choir at church, and there's a baritone section. I'm in the barely tone section, where they don't hang mics over you, but there's a fellowship that comes with it. Right? There's something that you can bond over that is not work. May or may not be family, but there's a creative bond that comes with it.
No question about it, and to me, it's very similar to developing a campaign for a client, in that you're basically creating this creative thing. We play original music, our band, so usually I'm writing music, and then the band is developing that music, and developing a creative campaign is very similar. Most great ideas, whether it's for business, personal, whatever they are, they're not the product of one human being. They're a collaboration of a group of people that are ultimately bringing something to fruition by adding little bits and pieces to it and bringing it to life. So whether it's developing a campaign or a strategic idea for a client, or building out a song that ultimately is played for, dozens of 3 or 4 people, it's a similar process, and I think that's why I enjoy it so much, in that it's a truly collaborative process where you're bringing things together and ultimately creating something at the end of it.
They say, if one person hears your message, you can change their life. So, I mean, if one person is in your audience for your song, it's like,
Yeah.
Hey, maybe it'll change their life.
No, I've had people come up in between like set breaks and things like that and request songs that, I really like the song, or after a show, and say, wow, I really enjoyed that. And that's meaningful, that someone actually paid enough attention to hear the words you were talking about. So it's a cool feeling.
Yeah, well, I know some of the things I'm in, they say the first thing people will pay you is their attention. right? And once you have it, what are you investing it in? What are you doing with their attention once you get it?
Yeah. Yeah. Although in today's kind of ADHD economy, it's kind of hard. You know, it's hard to get people to pay you their attention.
Yeah, no, very much so. But okay, having said that about paying you their attention, as a creative, as an agency owner, as a business owner, you now have a book out there,
Yeah.
and you helped people with their voice for so long, but now it's your voice.
Yeah.
So what moved you to the death of compromise? What moved you to now use your voice beyond the music, beyond the agency, and put this out into the ether?
Yeah, I don't speak publicly about politics that much, and I really never have, just because nobody really cares, quite frankly. But I'm kind of a long-suffering centrist, and I also, view myself as a pragmatist. I don't think we get everything we want in life. I don't think that in politics, we shouldn't be getting everything in life we want, because honestly, when that happens and one person is getting everything they want all the time, things end up in ruins. And as a long-suffering centrist, I've watched this kind of snowball picking up speed, going downhill, getting more violent every year, it seems. And it all seems to be, based around power and our thirst for power. And I wanted to really, people think this is a political book, and it's not. It's actually more of an historical analysis as to, I'm not looking to change someone's political views or hearts and minds. I'm trying to understand why things are so bad right now, why people are so angry at one another just because they might have a difference of opinion in politics or in religion. And so I wanted to go back and look historically and teach myself what had happened and what had led us to the point we're at. And so I went back 60, 70 years. I was able to interview a number of pretty weighty politicos, some business executives that one you and I both know, and some economists and former lobbyists and things like that, and just examine kind of what's gotten us to this point of where we're seeing repeated politically motivated violence in our country, where families, where communities are being torn apart by politics. It's really frustrating for me, and I hate seeing that. And the final straw for me was, even though I didn't really believe in anything he had to say, not anything he had to say, but in most of the things that he preached, was when Charlie Kirk was murdered. It was my son's 21st birthday, and I'm sitting around thinking about my son, and I see this news item pop up, and it was just kind of one of those breaking points. And so knowing that I'm not a politico really, but I'm a content creator. I know how to write. I know how to write very well. So I said, you know what? I've always wanted to do something with my political beliefs. Why not write? And so I did. And then I was able to schedule a number of interviews after I got about halfway done, and that really transformed the project even further. And so I'm grateful that I was able to find the time, like in the evenings, to do something like this, and bring it to fruition, and that people have seemed to take to the message. Because I think there's a lot of frustrated people in that soft middle that are tired of these extremes in our country dominating our politics.
Well, you kind of said, the death of compromise, but I also looked at it and said, could the subtitle be Death of Civility?
Without question. I mean, and that is something that started happening. I saw it start to happen in the early 90s, maybe late 1980s, when we started seeing politically charged language that we'd never seen before in and around the friction between the two major parties, kind of driven by changes at the FCC in terms of how media was governed. Something called the Fairness Doctrine was stripped away in 1987. Yep. And it led to the rise of Rush Limbaugh and Fox News and ultimately MSNBC. But then you saw kind of as the Contract for America in the early '90s was introduced, people like Newt Gingrich and Tom DeLay started using this charged language that had never been used, and I think it did lead to kind of ultimately where we are today and this total lack of civility. And I think the biggest thing that's happened, and this is, you mentioned if you can get one person to change their mindset, we've started to vilify those whom we disagree with. And if I could get one person to stop vilifying someone that they just disagree with, I would feel like the book has been a success, because we need to stop vilifying people just because, they vote red and I vote blue, or I vote red and they vote blue, whatever. It's leading us down a really dark path that has consequences.
I think you're right. I mean, I think what we've both seen is the tribal nature of business and politics has just gotten worse and worse over time. And I bounce back and forth between the comms world and the lobbying world. And when I started in the lobbying game, my mentors were like, there are no permanent enemies, no permanent friends, because we're here to serve the people. They thought about, the saying goes, politicians think of the next election, statesmen the next generation. And so they were generational thinkers. That's what they wanted to do. And so they disagreed. I mean, I worked for Senator Terry Sanford. The senator across the hall was Jesse Helms. There were no two far different people than those.
Yeah.
So what is it that's different that you see today in business and in politics? And you've talked to people from that 20 or 30 years ago, or when we were doing storm duty and we were talking to different governors. What's different now?
I think the collegial nature of politics has really changed. Tom Daschle, the former leader of the Senate, who I spoke with, he was telling me that one of his best friends on the planet still today is Trent Lott, who was the majority leader in the Republican Party in Congress. And I think that because of the things we were talking about earlier and this vilification, that it's become harder for people to have civil, to use your term, civil relationships with people whom they disagree with. And so, there's so many causes for this. There's not just, and this switch wasn't flipped overnight. There's so many pieces to this puzzle. One thing Senator John Danforth told me that I thought was kind of interesting. He's an ordained minister, and he feels that religious leadership has really failed this country in that they haven't stewarded these tensions well and instead taken advantage of them. And I think at the end of the day, we've gotten obsessed with power and being right all the time. And, I try to tell people in the book, and in fact, our former CEO, Bill Johnson, who you know very well and I know extremely well, he said to me, he used the analogy of a successful marriage. And the reality is that in a successful marriage, you're willing to lose the argument because you care about the union, you care about the marriage. Today, we're so obsessed with power and winning that we're not willing to compromise at all. In a marriage, we compromise every day for the most part. Most marriages that I know, and I know in mine, my wife and I do, and I'm sure you and Sheila do. And but in politics, we've stopped doing that. We have to be right, and it's all or nothing. And I think that's been kind of one of the biggest changes, and it's kind of all gotten down to power.
Yeah. Is it, do you think that as we are looking at people are starting to look at the next chapters in their lives, and some people used to look at politics, right? Some people used to say, I've had a successful business career, I've been successful, but now I'm going to look at how I serve people as a leader, as a politician. Yeah. That was the next step. So you're kind of putting it together now. It's more about power than about service.
I mean, a lot of good people we've seen a lot of good people are leaving Congress because they're just done with it. And yeah, I think a lot of smart people, even in local politics, where most people start, local politics have become a frightening place. It used, where school board members are being threatened, where somebody's walking into city hall or town hall meeting and using talking points that got off, national news. And a lot of good people that used to be in it for service are just calling it a day. And I remember I actually considered running for a state representative seat in Missouri, and I spoke to, I don't know, 15 or 20 people. And the last person I talked to was a Post-Dispatch columnist who had covered the state capitol for a long time. He said, look, you could, after getting a better sense of my politics, said you could be a conservative Democrat or a liberal Republican. If you were a liberal Republican, the first thing you'd do if you went against leadership was they'd run someone against you, and you'd have flyers sent to your closest neighbors of you dressed in, some kind of strange outfit and saying that you murdered babies. And if you're a conservative Democrat, well, then, you'd basically be on an island of your own. I said, so I'd accomplished nothing for 4 years? He said, pretty much, yeah. And so I just, that wasn't worth my time. If you do something from a service perspective, you want to feel like you're making a difference. And I think a lot of people have just kind of mailed it in and said, it's not worth it. It's really not. Some people do, but yeah, I think a lot of people don't anymore.
So as folks, you and I both, as folks who are brand people and marketing and message people, I think you said you're 55. I'm pushing 60 this year. How do we change that message? How do we encourage people who are in our atmosphere to return to the service, the civility?
That's a great question, because the behavior modeling is really important. What young people are learning is normal, or it seems normal to them, it shouldn't be normal in my mind. This vilification. And so I think it starts with those of us who are in some way politically active and just try to be human. I think we've kind of left our empathy and our humanity aside and we need to be more civil. We need to be less vilifying of those we disagree with, because there's a 360-degree sphere of that around us. Whether it's our kids, our friends, our bosses, it impacts them. Being a person of reason is not that hard. You just got to step back and take yourself out of kind of the thick of an argument and say, wow, what's what's really going on here? And think for yourself, and stop vilifying people because of something you heard on talk radio.
Yeah. So you wrote the book, you've done the music stuff and agency. What's still driving you? What's coming next for Aaron Perlut?
Well, right now, the economy's had a huge impact on the service industry, and it's made agency life difficult for the last couple of years. And I talked to a lot of agency leaders that are in the same boat that I'm in, and my partners and I are focused on really kind of figuring out what the model of marketing agencies are going to be moving forward in this economy, in this technology state. And so I think getting the business back on track is a priority. And then, I don't know, I want my kids to keep growing and persevering and exploring life. My wife and I want to enjoy our life. I think more than anything, I just want to continue to have a full life experience. Yeah. For as long as I'm alive, and that is, enjoy my personal life, enjoy my work life, enjoy my music life, enjoy time with my friends, try to go fishing as much as I can and not catch a damn thing. So all of that.
As long as you got a good fish market on the way back, I always learned,
Yeah.
But one of the things we talked about, you talk about your enjoying life and your personal life. We talk about in this series is what comes after success, is in that definition of success. And you and I, we talked a little bit how we've shared certain things, right, in life, and it's affected our definition of success. And so, I gently roll into some of these conversations, but for people out there, I like to try and be transparent about it. You and I both know what it's like to lose a child
Mm-hmm.
at birth, and it reframes life for you in a moment.
Yeah.
It redirects you. So, it, it, how have life's challenges, that and any others, affected your success and the view of where you're going and the legacy that you're trying to leave for your children, your family, your community?
Yeah, it's a really good question. It's interesting, that experience. Obviously, it leaves quite a mark on you, and I think more than anything, for me, and for my children, and for my wife, I want, because our daughter was not able to live a full life. I want them to be able to experience everything that she could not.
Yeah.
And I want to as well. And I think the greatest thing we can do for her legacy is just to ensure that we are never forgetting her, and trying to have as rich of a life as possible, and which is a hard thing to do. But I never, not a day goes by where I don't think of her. I have tattoos on my body to always remind me, and I wouldn't need them if I didn't. I mean, I still would if I didn't have those reminders. But yeah, it's a difficult thing. And then I also find myself, I think it's allowed me to be more empathetic with people that have lost things. Doesn't necessarily need to be a child or a parent or what have you, but just have experienced great loss. And I think that maybe it was something I struggled with in the past, that a lack of empathy. And I'd like to think that it's helped me come to grips with deeper levels of empathy for others. It's it's so easy to judge people. And we do it so commonly, we don't even realize it subconsciously. It might be the way someone walks, the way someone carries themselves, the way they speak, the way they look, the way they smell, the way they write. It just doesn't matter. And we, I try to be more empathetic to others as a result of losing our daughter. And I think it's, I want to be a better person every day, and I work very, very hard at it, and some of that is certainly related to her, and trying to do that in her memory.
Yeah, that loss gap is something. I share it with you. Our daughters, were stillborn, and our daughter was a surviving triplet, and it's challenging sometimes. You sit back and you think about what could have been. You think about how you're honoring the legacy of people who gone too soon, and like you said, people go through that with loss of a spouse or loss of a parent or loss of a sibling at whatever stage you're at. That, what I call that loss gap, can really be hard to fill when you're thinking about how it affects you on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, and I've had I had a friend lose his wife recently, and I went to him and said, "Look, I can't understand what you're going through." I said, "The closest thing I can get is that I want you to know that I lost a daughter once, and if you ever want to talk, if I can ever help you in any way, please let me know. If our shared sense of loss, that lost gap, as you put it, can help." It's hard though. It's it's really hard.
Yeah. So as a father, as a husband, as a business owner, as a person who has put themselves out in the public eye for
Far too long.
For examination, right? I mean, you've done it everything from I was looking back at some of when the internet was getting started, and you were, your Dr. Mustache, and all the way up through your book interviews, you have not shied away from putting yourself out in the public domain for people to love or hate, right? Because you felt it was important. And so for people who are considering that move now in this new world of new media, podcasts, social media, um, you know, for the young and the old, what are the lessons that you've learned exposing yourself to that?
Wow. Um, so a lot of the things I do, people don't understand why I'm doing them, and that's fine. They're usually learning tools.
I didn't understand either.
Yeah. When I created the American Mustache Institute, I did it as a tool for me to understand the digital brand sphere, and it was enormously impactful in my life. In fact, I don't think we would have started Elasticity had it not been, and this is how ridiculous that sounds, without the American Mustache Institute. But it taught me so much, and I knew so much more about digital marketing, social media, content, and how content evolved and flowed before a lot of my contemporaries because of it. Because I was willing to put myself out there and experiment. So a lot of what I do is professional and personal experimentation. It certainly comes with drawbacks, and I think it depends on your willingness to, as you said, to be out there, to be in front and center. I've had people that I thought knew me a lot better who have said I do a lot of the things that I do for ego and because I like the attention, and that's not necessarily true. Even the music end of things. I mean, I think that the thing I enjoy most about music, as I mentioned before, is the collaboration, which is done in a private space with 5 guys building something together. That's what I love about it. It's a really great question, but there are definitely some pitfalls to it, and I would just say that if you're going to put yourself out there, have a perspective. With everything I've done, I've tried to have a perspective to share, one that I thought was a little bit different than the perspectives that I had seen. So with the American Mustache Institute, I made it about humor. With the music, I've made it about storytelling, stories that I wanted to tell. Some of them have humor, some of them are very sad, some of them are about myself and my alcoholism. Some of them are very, very personal things. With my work, you're trying to really tap into an audience and create something that is going to resonate with an audience that is primed to consume whatever it is you're working on. But it's always about having something interesting and unique to say. And even with the book, I wanted to come out and write something about my frustrations, but I knew that it was going to resonate with a number of people, and I think it has.
Thank you. Yeah, you mentioned that there are drawbacks, there are costs when you put yourself out there like that, and you mentioned your recovery and other things. What are some of the costs and drawbacks that, as a business owner, as a person who's been in that public spotlight, that you have? I've seen you overcome them. What are some of those challenges you've had to fight through?
Yeah, so there's been some very personal ones. There's been some business challenges. I mentioned my alcoholism, and there was an underlying anxiety that was driving it. I was basically self-medicating myself, but that anxiety and the alcoholism, sometimes together, sometimes separately, were very damaging to my personal reputation, damaging to my company. And I'm 8 years sober now, but basically I was an alcoholic for 30 years, and I needed to and I needed to quit, and I did. And then I needed to understand why and what was driving it. I think that on a lesser level, I mentioned the American Mustache Institute and how it led to the creation of elasticity. Well, for the first 5-10 years, we'd walk into a room, people would call us the mustache guys. Yeah. And so we got the perspective that we were very bro-oriented and unable to reach a female demographic. Right. And that wasn't at all we were trying to do, but it had negative implications. I have some people who don't really respect me professionally and think that I'm too silly or not serious or what have you. And so, you take the good with the bad. But I have enough people that have kind of seen through what I was trying to do, or at least given me the opportunity to explain, like this conversation, explain what the point was, and that's been invaluable. But not everybody will do that. We love judging people, often hypocritically so.
Yeah, I have a mentor who likes to quote. I don't know where it comes from, but they said, I'm not for everybody, but I am for somebody. I'm not going to be everybody's cup of tea, but somebody out there. If I can help one person, if I can serve one person, if I can serve my clients who are looking for the specialties that I have been purposed to give them, then I have accomplished my goal. But I ain't for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm certainly not. But fortunately, I'm for my wife, and that's what matters. A little nice, I like.
Yeah, there you go. As long as we have that, right? When the lights go off and the sound's gone, somebody loves you.
Yeah.
So when you think about your future, when you think about these next number of years and decades ahead, what is it you think you're called to do?
I don't know. I want to make sure that my family is in a good, stable place, and that's an ever-evolving thing. It's never finite. I want to be happy, if I'm doing something that starts to make me unhappy, I'm sure I'll make a pivot, because I'm not afraid to make a change in my life. And I want my wife and I to kind of approach our golden years in a productive but happy way. I want to be happy, and I want to make sure that I'm a positive influence to those around me. I don't want to be a burden to anyone, so I want to make sure that I'm productive and I'm positive, but I don't know exactly what that is. I know that, what I'm working towards right now, and as I mentioned earlier, it's, making sure our company's healthy, making sure we continue to put food on the table for people. I want to make sure my kids thrive and are happy and live very productive lives and do whatever I can to contribute to that. I want to make sure my wife feels good about where she is. And we have a loving, productive relationship together. And we've built a life together over, more than 30 years. And I want to continue that ride until we can't. And so I think it's just being productive and being a positive impact on those around me. I'm not exactly sure what that looks like.
You said something that you said, I'm not afraid to change.
Yeah.
A lot of people are.
Yeah.
So how do you, not judging, not but just thinking about how you got there, and if other people are in that situation, right? I mean, I give you the scenario where I know a lot of people now who are in their late 50s who are very scared because of economy, because of AI, because of different things, that they may lose their position, they may lose their job, they may lose. There's things that they are afraid of.
Yeah.
How do you try and help people with a lesson or two or a thought or to be able to be not afraid to change.
Yeah, I wish there was an easy answer to that, but I think it's what I try to do is like I do in work, try to give people case studies that demonstrate what's possible. My dad used to always say, "You can't teach an old dog new tricks," and I think that's total bullshit. I think that reinvention is the mother of invention, and so I'm always trying to kind of reinvent myself in some way. I mean, my dad, in particular, he was perplexed as to why I wrote this book, because I've been playing music for 8 years, and if for some reason I started doing something differently on a professional level, I'm sure people would be completely perplexed, and that's okay. I don't really care. It's not being afraid to reinvent yourself and finding ways you could. Until 8 years ago, I had never played the guitar and I'd never sung outside of a shower, and now I do it in front of hundreds and hundreds of people all across the country, and I think we do a pretty good job of it. And I think not being afraid it's fear. It's this fear, this deep insecurity, and I'm as insecure as anyone. But it's getting over that fear, moving beyond that fear of reinventing yourself and finding a new pathway. And sometimes we do it because we have to. We have no other choice. Sometimes we do it because we're bored. Sometimes we do it because we're curious. I'm sure all three of those things have led me into kind of being the wanderer that I am, and trying to reinvent myself as many times as I have, and I've done it a lot. But I want to continue to try to reinvent myself and not be afraid of things. And I think that's how I can best serve those around me and be a positive impact around those around me as well.
That's great. Well, Aaron, look, I appreciate it, man. I really enjoy our conversation. Where can people find the book, the music, when they're searching out there? Where should we send them?
Probably the best place is just my personal website, aaronperlut.com. You can find links there to everything that I do, whether it's the book, whether it's music, whether it's elasticity. Anything I do is there.
That's great. Well, look, I really appreciate the friendship. I appreciate the conversation. I have enjoyed watching the journey through the ups, the downs, the crazies, the funs, and it's a far cry from sleeping under a desk in a hurricane.
Orlando.
but the adventure continues, as they say.
It sure does, Garrick.
So,
thank you for having me, man. I appreciate it.
Pretty much, yep. And so thanks for everyone for joining us and for listening and learning from Aaron's journey as a creative, as a brander, as a person who decided it was time to use his voice, whether through his music or through his agency or through the book, The Death of Compromise. I think the lesson here is that when you build the right culture, when you include the right people, when you have the right relationships, you have the opportunity to make a change. And just change for one person is an inheritance. So again, thank you for joining us on Inheritance to Income. I don't take it for granted that you spent this time with us. God bless.
Thank you, Garrick.